All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got questions, go ahead and post them. Should be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, to the right of the video if you're a larger screen. All right. So I heard some. All right. So we'll start here with say. I'm not sure if I'm saying that pronouncing that correctly, but it says, "Is there a video on developing a backswing?" So we have lots of videos on the backswing. It really just depends on what you're trying to do with your backswing. What we want to understand is that um, you know we want to make a good backswing so that way we can have good transition. We have good transition to have a good downswing to have good impact, right? So we kind of want to work from the impact back. So if you're having issues it's not about perfecting your backswing, then perfecting your downswing. What I like to see, players do is mainly do what they do naturally, and then if there are issues with what they do naturally, then we can tweak things. So a couple things that I like to see in the backswing. Number one is more of a wide takeaway, right? So we want to bring this club back nice and wide. The reason why we wouldn't want to just pick it up like this with our wrists is because if we do that, then we're not getting our body involved. We're not turning our body. We're going to tend to not turn very much and bend our arms to try to lengthen our swing, and which is going to lead to to poor contact and loss of power. Right. So we want to have a nice wide takeaway. This is something that we talk about in the power turn section of the toss speed golf system. It's one of the first things you do to help you to get a good power turn. So that would really kind of be number one. Would be really making sure that you get a nice wide takeaway. As far as other things in the backswing, what we also want to see is not a big slide of the hips. So in the backswing, we don't want to be sliding our hips this way, right? So we don't want to go up to the top like this. We want to get a nice turn of our hips around. And again, this is something that we talk about in the stable fluid spine course, right? So getting nice and angled away at address, and then staying angled away as we go up to the top. If I slide my hips, right, then I'm going to tend to, come over the top. I'm going to tend to lose power because I'm not going to be able to shift my weight to my lead side. That can lead to chunking, topping, things like that. So really a lot of the most important things that are happening in your swing, as far as the backswing is concerned, we're covering that in the top speed golf system. So that's kind of what it comes down to. That's what the top speed golf system is all about. It's about taking what are the things that we see all the best players doing, right? And what we want to do is try to replicate those things. If you get those things down, the things that all the best players are doing, then we're going to be in better shape for it. But if we're trying to get a perfect backswing to look, exactly a certain way, if you look on tour, you're going to see all kinds of different backswings. You're going to see, you're going to see them all take a wide takeaway, but there's going to be varying degrees. You're going to see some players take the club more outside, more inside, or more in line with the hands, right? You're going to see some closing of the face, bringing it back, some maybe opening a little bit more toe up in the backswing. You're going to see a lot of different things. That's because everyone's a little bit different. There's a lot of ways to play this game. But the reality is, right, that if we think about the top speed golf system, right, that's all the things that all the best players do, right? So those are the things that we want to copy. The commonalities, the universal truths is what we would call them. The things that we see among all the players. So we see all players getting a full or a wide takeaway to a certain extent. There's varying degrees of that, but they're all taking it. Nobody's just picking up the club with the hands. And we're seeing all players, stay nice to say, we're not seeing any tour players at the top of the swing like this, right? So those would kind of be the things I'd be looking at. Everything else, would be kind of your own swing signature, kind of what your own kind of take on it. All right, so let's keep going here. So Buzz Bill says, once I take the club back slowly along the correct plane, I tend to start the downswing from the top very quickly and lose my plane. Any tips for how to slow down yet not lose distance? Well, I would just make sure that you're getting a full turn, right? That would kind of be the main thing. Make sure that you are getting a full shoulder turn, right? The reason why you may be rushing the downswing, or one of the biggest reasons I see players rush the downswing, is because they don't get a full turn, right? So they get right here and they think, man, I got to rush down to get any kind of speed, right? Whereas if we get a nice full turn, right, then I just feel like I have all the time in the world and I can start to sequence things a lot better. So that's what I would look at. I'd make sure that you have a good full turn in your swing. Work through the power turn course in the Top Speed Golf system. That would be a good bet as well. And to get to the Top Speed Golf system, in case you're not aware, you can click the instruction tab at the top and then go to Top Speed Golf system and then get started on the appropriate course from there. So Warren A says, Q, what is the best way to get in position and swing path to hit up on my driver? Let me read that again. What is the best way to get in position and swing path to hit up on my driver? Then how transition to hitting the next shot with my 3-wood off the grass? So good question. So basically, it's hitting down on the ball versus up on the ball. So first of all, our setup is gonna help with this, right? So for a driver, right, I'm gonna have the ball position more forward. So if here's my ball, like there, I'm gonna have my ball position be more closer to my lead foot, right? That's gonna allow my swing arc to bottom out before the golf ball so I can hit up on it. I'm also gonna get a little bit wider with my stance. This is going to help me to kind of stay behind the ball more and hit up on it. This is also going to help me to get my compression line more angled away. Remember our compression line? That's a line that goes from our lead ankle, hip, and shoulder at contact. We want that to be more angled away when we're trying to hit up on the golf ball. The ball is elevated. It's up on a tee, right? So that allows us to have the opportunity to hit up on it and hit it farther, right? So that's really kind of the main thing. So our setup is wider. We're maybe more angled away with our body here because we're wider. The ball position is more forward and it's elevated. Now, when we hit a shot off the turf, whether it's your 3-wood or it's your pitching wedge or whatever, right? The ball position is going to be more toward the middle of the stance because we need the bottom of the swing arc to be ahead of the golf ball on the target side of the golf ball instead of on the opposite side of the ball, because we have to hit down on it to a certain extent, right? I'm going to be a little bit narrower with my body, right? My ball position, again, is going to be more toward the middle of my stance. Not in the middle, but a little bit more toward the middle of the stance, right? And when I come to contact, right, I'm not going to be as angled away. I'm going to be, with my compression line, is going to be more straight up and down or just slightly angled away. With a driver, we can be more angled away because we're hitting up on it. We want that swing arc to occur before. Right? So that's going to allow us to hit down on the golf ball and drive the nail down. So I think a good visualization is also to have the feeling that when you're hitting the ball off of the tee with your driver, you want to imagine like you're driving a nail up into the ball. I actually have a ball here with a nail through it. So with my driver, what I would try to feel like is that I'm driving the nail up. For any shot that I'm hitting directly off the ground, I'd feel like I'm driving the nail down. So imagine where that needs to be in your stance, right? If I'm driving the nail down on the ball, I want it to be more toward the middle of my stance. If I'm driving the nail up on the ball, I wanted to have the ball more forward in my stance and teed up to allow myself to do that, right? So those are some good visuals to help you with that. So Dave P says, tell me about fast hands. I don't know what that's in reference to, Dave. I couldn't tell you. I don't know. If you give me some context, I may be able to help you with that. But yeah, I don't know where that's from. So sorry. I wish I mean, your hands aren't really moving that fast, but I'm not sure what you're hoping to, what kind of answer you're hoping to get there. I'm not familiar with anything regarding fast hands or anything like that. So give me a little bit of context. I may be able to help. All right. So Jeff K says, hope and pray all have escaped the worst of Ian. Yeah. So where I am, I'm in the Orlando area. Obviously we got hit yesterday for sure but which is why we had to cancel office hours. But um, where I am, it's not as bad as other places. I know like Fort Myers and places like that got, I mean, absolutely destroyed. Um, and I know places on the other coast also got hit. Daytona Shores and places like that. Orlando, we got a lot of rain. It's definitely flooding in some areas. Um, but went around the neighborhood. There are a couple fences that tree limbs that fell on fences and broke down and stuff like that. But you know, my neighborhood got relatively off easy, compared to some other things that I saw and heard. But thanks for the thoughts and prayers. Appreciate it. All right. So Jim S says, my hands, wrists get sore from golfing. Am I doing something? All right. So a little bit confused here. So why does my swing with irons feel disconnected? My driver and woods feel connected. Honestly, I don't know. I wish I could tell you. Maybe if I saw your swing, I'd maybe be able to tell you that. As far as why your wrists get sore, again, it'd be hard to say. One thing we have to keep in mind is that our body's not meant to swing a golf club. So if we do anything too much, right, you're going to develop issues, right? I actually just recently got back into lifting weights and stuff after taking probably 8 months off of doing it. Well, went into it a little bit too hard and heavy at first, a little bit too frequent, and my elbows are really sore from lifting. Right. Well, I got a little bit of tendonitis from going at it too hard. So it's the same kind of thing with golf, right? If we go at it too hard, too often, and the older we get, the harder, the more, the less, I'm not a doctor or anything, so I don't know all that stuff, but I know the older you get, the more sore you get, right? So I'm sure that has a lot to do with, your ligaments and your tendons and things like that. Um, just kind of over time, being in that position. So it's not always. Now, it could certainly be something that you're doing in your swing that if you did differently, it may not get as sore as often or as much, right? But it's not always the case. If I sat here and I waved at you, right, for an hour, I'll tell you what, my wrist would probably get pretty sore, right? Just from long, repetitive, doing that over and over. So, that's the other thing that's going on. Now, if you're not playing a lot of golf and just every single time, and that could be part of it too. If you're not playing a lot, then your body's not used to, it doesn't have the strength around the joints that's that's supporting those, and that could also be a problem. So you kind of want just the right amount. If you don't play very often, you're going to get sore. If you play too much, you're going to get sore. So you want to have that in between. Now, if you're in that in between and you have chronic pain all the time, that would probably be the time when I would recommend going to see a doctor to see, maybe you have something torn or partially torn or something like that. And it's your body's telling you like, hey, there's something wrong here and we need to go get it checked out. I hope that's not the case. But yeah, that may be something you want to look into. But yeah, as far as the disconnected versus connected with, woods and irons, it's really hard to say. It could be just a feel thing and not a reality thing. With our driver, we are more upright with our body, right? And we're hitting the ball and we're hitting up on the ball versus down on the ball. So those things could be what's going on. What I would recommend doing is video your swing face on and down the line with your irons and with your driver and see if there's any big differences there, right? See, kind of go to first parallel, go to lead arm parallel, go to the top, go to lead arm parallel and downswing, parallel club at downswing, impact, and look at see if you see any huge differences there, and that could be the answer to the question. But it's hard to say without even if I saw the swing, it may still be hard to say because you're talking about a feel thing, which feel is relative, right? So I don't know how you feel, you don't know how I feel, so it's hard to know for sure on that kind of stuff. All right, let's keep going. All right, so JP says, putting drills have helped me on lag and target direction, but need help on reading the greens. in detail. Reading the slope seems easier for me, but subtle green raises and drops are hard to read. Any good tips or training available? Um, yeah, I mean, all that's going to be really, really difficult for sure. What I would recommend doing is getting more in tune with your feet. That's really where you try to feel these things. Is really in your feet. So when I'm trying to read a green, what I'll do is I'll get behind the ball quite a bit, 20 feet or so, and I'll try to kind of look at the whole scope. And then as you're walking up to the green, it's also good to kind of see, okay, where are the major slopes, and so that way you kind of see what's going on. But when you get on the green, get down low, see, so that way you can see what's going on. And then let's say, if this is my putt right here, let's say even if this was like a 30-footer or something like that, right? What I'll do is I'll get behind it and kind of look at it and see what's going on here, and I'll actually walk around the putt, right? I'll walk all the way around it and feel in my feet, okay, where do I feel the slope going, right? And then, once I have a good feel for it, then I'm going to commit to it, and then I'm going to hit it. Now, keep in mind the subtle stuff. That's hard for anybody. It's really, really hard for anybody. That there's definitely probably people that are more in tune and can feel better in their feet and things like that. And can feel very subtle breaks and are really good at it. What it comes down to, really, to be really good at reading a green, is to just play a green a lot and kind of know where all the subtle breaks are, right? It's hard to go to a new course and know where all the subtle breaks are, right? Because you just haven't had the experience. And even if you may feel something in your feet, and then the opposite may happen because of the local, just kind of how it is. It could be kind of tricking you a little bit. So, personally, I don't know if I've gone anywhere and just lit up the greens the first time I ever putted or played them, because I just know all the breaks. Typically, it takes time and repetition and just kind of local knowledge, kind of knowing to know all the subtle breaks and stuff. So what I'd recommend doing is just commit to it. Understand that if you haven't played somewhere before, you're not going to know all the subtle breaks. Just try to do the best you can, and try to feel it in your feet. A way that you can do to train your feet would be to you can assign a slope rating to it. So aim point golf is one way to do it. Personally, I don't like. I mean, I shouldn't say I don't like aim point. I don't like it for myself. Um, I've looked into it. I've tried training it, but I mean, unless you're like a professional golfer and you're literally maybe you're in the situation where you're playing golf every single day, and all you're doing is golf, like 8 hours a day. Basically, you play golf and then practice golf the other, when you're not playing golf. In that situation, then yeah, aim point golf is probably a good thing to do. But for me, I just don't play that much, and I don't practice that much either. And it's hard to get good at, and also it's slower, and I like to play fast. So what I like to do is just kind of get behind the putt, walk around it. Now I'm already seeing it in my mind. I'm going to walk it. The whole process takes maybe 30 seconds. And sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong, but I'm 80%, as far as, I would probably only be maybe 20% better had, if I did aim point golf, right? Where the idea with aim point is where basically you're reading it with your feet, but you get really, really good at reading it with your feet. So you practice assigning slope ratings to greens. So typically it's going to be a 1, 2, or 3, right? 3 being quite a bit of slope, quite a bit of break, and 1 being a subtle amount of break, right? So what you can do is you can buy these levels that have the slope rating on them, and then you could go over a slope, right, and kind of try to train yourself like, okay, I think this is a 2% slope. Put the level down on the ground, see what it says. If it says 1.2, then you're overdoing it a little bit. Then I just go to another spot, do the same thing, and you're going to train yourself to kind of feel those slopes over time. But you can imagine how that would take quite a bit of time to get good at that, right? So that's an option as well. But like I said, it's really just going to come with local knowledge and understanding. We have to understand, like tour players, they have the topography of the hole. They have the green books. They don't have them on the course, but they still have them, right? They still know the topography of everything. They know where everything's breaking. They know where there's more or less break, right? And they're doing practice rounds. They're seeing where all the breaks are on the greens, right? We're not doing all of that, right? We don't have all of that. So that would be, we can't expect to be as good at reading greens as tour players are, right? So that really, a lot of it just comes with experience and local knowledge and stuff like that. All right, let's keep going. So Lee M says, I recently filmed my driver 7-iron swings on the range and was amazed to see that I have a noticeable hesitation after contact before finishing my follow through. I must be losing tons of club head speed. How to fix this hitch or whatever it's called. So sounds like you're just not coming around into a full finish. Depends on what's causing you to not come around into a full finish. So usually it's just stalling the body and not continuing to rotate through. And a lot of times that comes from people keeping their trail foot planted on the ground. So go ahead and let that heel come off the ground. If I keep my trail foot planted on the ground, it basically acts as an anchor for my hips and won't allow me to continue to rotate, right? So I want to be coming down here, let my heel come off the ground, and then let my body kind of pull my hip all the way around. That's what I'd be trying to do. So I just do some drills where I go up to the top, I come to impact, and I pause. I have my heel off the ground, and then from there I just get a little bit of momentum, and I come around into a full finish. And when you come around into a full finish, I try to hold that for a few seconds, right? So that way you can get the sense of, okay, I'm trying to get here, right? And then I would try to work that into more of a fluid swing and then one with the golf ball. So Kerry T says, should I try to have trail elbow pointing slightly forward in both driver and iron swings? I can do this move with the driver, but struggle getting trail elbow pointing forward with irons. At Kerry, what point in the swing? And forward as in, forward of what? Right? I don't know what. If you're asking, should you be tucking your trail elbow with both your driver and your irons? Yes, absolutely. You should be. Right? That's what shallows out the club. If that's what you're asking, then yes, that's what you should be doing with both of them. Hard to say why it might be difficult. It might be difficult because you're trying to hit down on your irons and up on your driver. And when you hit down on it, maybe for you, your natural inclination is to get your elbow to come like this. So what I would make sure that you do is you get a good weight shift forward. So that way your club can bottom out more forward, right? So if I come over the top, right, that means I have to kind of hang back, right? Because if I were to come over the top and shift my body forward, well, I'd hit the ground way too far in front, right? So if we're getting the elbow in from the inside and then I hang back, well, then I'm going to hit the ground way behind the ball. So you got to make sure when you tuck the arm that you get it to work, that you get the good weight shift to the lead side. So that way you are able to make ball first contact. So that's what I'd be looking at. Hopefully that answers your question. All right. So Bill S says, well, please comment on tempo and what I have read should be a backswing and downswing ratio of 3-1. Mine is closer to 5-1. Should I try to speed up the backswing? I mean, you can see I would do with what's most comfortable for you. There's no one tempo that everyone has to use, right? If you look at, Colin Morikawa, he's probably closer to what you're talking about, 5-1. Statistically, the best ball striker on tour. Not this past season, but the season before, and he may have been this past season too, but he was definitely high up there, right? So yeah, you have to find what works best for you. You could see if speeding it up is a lot of times a faster backswing can lead to a faster downswing. You can see if speeding it up would help you, but there might be a reason why you go slow in the backswing. Right? There might be a reason for that. And the reason might be that it helps you get the club in a better position. And if you go faster, maybe the club gets in a bad position, and then you hit it worse, right? So you have to find what personally works best for you. There's no one tempo that everyone has to use. I don't buy into that. Everyone kind of has their own rhythm and tempo. John Rahm, right? Recently #1 player in the world. After before Sky Scheffler took over #1, right? Very fast swing tempo, extremely fast, right? Probably like 2-1. He plays pretty dang good from there. So I would just find what works best for you. Charles C says working on clays, drew it, and then it cut off. So maybe he got it in later. We'll move forward here from S West says, "Hi Q. I skull the ball, and I know most people do this because the bottom of the swing arc is behind the ball. However, I videoed my swing, and my arc actually bottoms out about 6 inches in front of the ball. So I'm actually hitting the top of the ball as I come down before the bottom of the arc. Any suggestions?" Yeah, get down to the ground, right? So, if it's basically when we talk about the low point of the swing, right? We want the low point of the swing to be in front of the golf ball when we're hitting a ball off the ground, right? So if we think of low point, right? So you can think of this circle as the arc of the club head through, right? So my club's coming down in the downswing, it bottoms out, then works back up, right? If this taped part of the hula hoop here, if this is the bottom of the swing arc, we basically want the golf ball to be right here, right? So the bottom of the swing arc needs to be in front of and below a little bit the golf ball. What's happening with you is yours is not below the golf ball. It's probably even with the golf ball. It needs to get below the golf ball. So you're saying that your low point is in front. You can see that on video, but you need it to be down, right? So I'd really be trying to hit down on the golf ball, hit the ground. Really focus on hitting the ground. That should help out a lot because the bottom of your swing arc just isn't low enough. You need to get more. You need to get depth. You need to get down into the ground. So really focus on hitting. Watching that club work down into the ground where the ball is. All right. Yeah, low point is not only ahead of the golf ball, you got that covered, but it's also below the golf ball. You got to get below the golf ball. So Pat says, what is causing wear on the heel of the glove and base of forefinger? I'm right-handed golfer. Well, if you're getting a wear on the base, it's probably because you're holding the butt end of the club too close here. So you see, if I hold it like this, the edge of the butt end of this club is going to rub into my glove, and that's going to cause a lot of wear. I want my hand to be clear of that, right? So I don't want this edge to be rubbing on my hand, right? And that's going to save your gloves. As far as base of the forefinger, that's where wear should be happening. So that's pretty normal. Typically, you're going to get normal amounts of wear, in this area here. Basically where the club should be kind of going through here. So you can see how that's going through the base of my forefinger. There's going to be some rubbing there. You may get some on the thumb, right? So those are kind of like the pressure points that are happening, right? Right here, along here, and then the thumb. That's where you're going to typically see the most wear. If you're getting the wear right here, that's because of the butt end of the club is rubbing on there most likely. So I just choke down on the club a little bit so that way the edge of the glove is not rubbing on you there. All right, let's keep going. All right, got a question from Charles C. here. It says, working on clays, 20 minutes, the most solid shots, drill #1. Goal, 10 hook shots in a row. All my hooks start left, some draw, and some have a slight fade. Well, hold on a second. All your hooks start left and some have a slight fade. That wouldn't be a hook then, would it? Do all hooks need to draw to be considered good? So a hook is just A hook is a draw. It's just an excessive draw, right? So if you're right-handed, you need the ball to be curving without a doubt from right to left. That's what you need. So a fade would be left to right. A draw and a hook would be right to left. A draw would be a small amount of right to left. A hook would be a lot amount. So you want to be unquestionable. It's hooking a lot from right to left. In drill number 1, it does not matter where it starts. Drill number 1, it only matters that it's hooking, right? And that it's hooking obviously. So 10 in a row. The hook does not matter if it starts left. The next drill is when you get the ball starting to the right and then hooking to the left. And then the third drill is where you dial that in and you get your nice baby draw that starts a little bit to the right of the target that draws back toward the target. So it doesn't matter where it starts. And I would just make sure you watch the video. Clay talks about all this in the video. Not hopefully, maybe you have watched the video, but some people I know just take the workbooks or whatever and just take it out and don't watch the video. Make sure you watch the video. Clay talks about all that in there. Question 2 says Clay's video shows hitting these hooks, but the view doesn't show how the hands release through and after impact. Can you demonstrate? That's because it's not important for the drill, really. We're not trying to put in every little thing in your head to get you to get you to hook the ball. All we want you to do is strengthen the grip and get that face closed to get it to hook. I wouldn't worry about what your hands are releasing and all that stuff. I just worry about getting the ball to hook. Don't overcomplicate it. That's another thing that I see a lot of people do that is to their detriment. A lot of this stuff, it's the concept is not hard, right? Not saying that the actual activity isn't difficult. The actual activity or what you're trying to do can absolutely be difficult, but the concepts are usually very simple. So if you make the concepts overcomplicated and not simple, and then the what you're trying to do is already very difficult to do, it just makes it near impossible. So don't worry about the release of the club. Don't worry about after impact and the hands and all that stuff. Just do your natural grip, get that face shut, and get that ball to hook. And that's all we're trying to do. Don't overcomplicate something that's very simple. That's all we're trying to do. So Pat says, when doing drills, how many repetitions do you need to do before it gets ingrained in muscle memory? There's no set number. What really comes down to is you do them until you don't have to think about it anymore, until you just do it automatically. So there's basically 4 stages of learning. The first stage is what's called unconscious incompetence. So this is where, excuse me, this is where, let's say you're working on shallowing out the club, right? You come down steep and you're working on shallow club. Well, at one point in time, you didn't even know what steep or shallow was. You didn't know what you were doing with your swing. You were incompetent, right? So you were unaware and incompetent with what was going on, right? So that's stage 1. Then you work into stage 2, which is now called conscious incompetence. This is where, well, hey, I'm coming down steep. I know I need to get the club shallowing out, but you don't know how to do it. You're unable to do it. You don't know how to do it, right? Then you move into stage 3, which is called conscious competence. This is where now you're shallowing out the club, but you're aware of it, right? You're able to do it, but you have to think about it in order to do it. The moment you don't think about it is the moment you go back to what you were doing before, right? So that's stage 3. And then you stay in stage 3 until eventually you work into stage 4, which is called unconscious competence. This is where you do it and you don't have to think about it. It just automatically happens, right? So that's basically, what you have to work through. Now, if you're someone who was really crazy, you were coming down like this, generally the farther off you are from what you're trying to do, the more repetition, the more you're gonna have to think about it, because what you naturally did before was so far from what you're trying to do. If that's the case, it may take 10,000 reps or more. I mean, it's hard to say. You don't really know. Now, if you're someone who's just a little bit steep and you're just trying to get it a little bit more shallow, it's probably not going to take as many reps, right? You're going to be able to move into, that last stage, unconscious competence, faster, because you weren't as far away from what you were trying to do. So, when we work through the Toss Speed Golf system, we tell you to do anywhere between 1,000 and 3,000 reps. But to be honest, those are really just arbitrary numbers. Those are just numbers that, okay, if they did 1,000 reps, it'd probably be pretty ingrained. It'd probably be, for lack of a better term, muscle memory. Our muscles don't have memory technically, but for our brain to learn the motor pattern and for it to become second nature, ingrained, right? It could take 1,000, 3,000 reps, but that doesn't mean that for you in particular, it won't take 500 reps. It doesn't mean for you in particular, it may take 10,000 reps. It just depends on, how you're practicing it, how often you're practicing it. Are you doing it correctly all the time? There's a lot of things to take in there. So the best answer I can give you is that you keep having to think about it until you don't anymore, until you just do it without any conscious thought. And if you think about it, you've done this for anything you've ever learned to do, right? So I'm going to assume that you are a proficient typer, right? Well, at one point in time, you were not. At one point in time, you worked through those stages of learning, right? You worked through that and you had no idea what a keyboard was or anything. And then at first you were my journey was, okay, now I'm pointing and pecking, right? Then I learned, okay, well, this is how my fingers go on the keyboard. Whoa, all these letters are in a weird order. Like, how do I know what to do? And then you start to learn, through repetition, how that happened. I mean, how many reps did it take you to get to where you're a proficient typer, right? Obviously you didn't count the reps probably, but I think it took you a long time to get to a proficient typer. So anything you ever learn to do, you have to work through those stages. It's no different in the golf swing. So Bud N says, what is an effective practice routine for pitching wedge? What works for you? Not sure I understand the question. If you're like for pitching, you want to learn how to pitch shots. What I'd recommend doing is working through our Toss Speed Golf wedge system. Really, really great wedge system. Get your setup down, get your mechanics down, then good drills to help you learn with the skill process. That's where I would start. To get to the Toss Speed Golf wedge system, I click the house icon at the top of the page. That will take you to the home page. And then from there, you can click the Toss Speed Golf wedge system. All right, let's keep going. So Mike W says, I've been working on staying down and shallowing the club. My miss used to be straight left. Now I'm fading right. What is the cause and how can I correct it? So really the pull is part of the same issue with the fading right. In both of those issues, you're coming down steep, right? So what that means is our club is coming down steeply and then it's working from out to in through the golf ball. When you pull it, the club face is pointing also to the left. When you fade it, right, the face is open to the direction the club is swinging, right? So a pull, my club is swinging to the left. My club face is also pointed to the left. A fade, my club is swinging to the left, but my face is open to the direction my club head is swinging, right? So what you need to do is, number one, get the face closed, right? Number two, and the reason why we need to get the club face closed is so that way we're incentivized to do number two, which is shallow out the club. So what I'd recommend doing is work through our 20-minute shallowing fix. I know you've been working. It sounds like you've been working on staying down, shallowing out the club, but you probably just need to work on it more. If you're pulling it and fading it, that means that you're coming down steep, right? So you need to go work through drill number one, then make sure you get those 10 hooks in a row, then drill number two, then drill where you get the ball to start to the right, curve to the left. Then drill number three is where you dial it in and get your nice baby draw. So that's what I recommend doing. Mike, to get to the 20-minute shallowing fix, just click the instruction tab at the top, then select the 20-minute shallowing fix from there. So Ted W says, with driver right side tilt, do I stay in that on the downswing? Yes, when you come down to the golf ball, you're going to have some right side bend, right? So I'm here at the top. I'm going to have some left side bend. Then I'm going to gradually work into right side bend as I come into contact. And then when I come through the full finish, then I straighten out. So yes, when the downswing, you will have some right side bend. All right, let's keep it going. So while you guys come up with questions, I'll answer a question that I get quite often that you guys might be interested in. How do you hit the ball, then the turf? Well, the important thing to look at is our lead shoulder, right? That's a really, really important part of it. So if my lead shoulder is very much behind the golf ball, I'm going to tend to hit behind the ball, right? My lead shoulder is more in front of the golf ball, then the club's going to bottom out more in front, right? So that's one of the most common things I see is that lead shoulder just gets too far back away from the target and will tend to hit the ground behind the ball when we do that. So what I'd recommend doing is working through our stop chunking and topping course, because it's really, even if you're not chunking, maybe you're not topping, but topping and chunking are really a product of the same issue. It's a product of the club bottoming out before the golf ball. If my shoulder is back, then my club's going to tend to bottom out before the golf ball. I want my swing arc to work down into the golf ball, right? So if we're looking at my hula hoop here, if we're looking at this is the swing arc, right? This piece of tape here, I need that to be, if my fist here, my fist here is the golf ball, I need the bottom of my swing arc to be ahead of and below the golf ball, right? If it's above the ball and back here, then I'm going to tend to top it, right? If it's below the ball and back there, then I'm going to chunk it. So if my left shoulder is back, right, then I'm going to chunk it. So in the stop chunking and topping course, we do a couple things. One, we make sure that we get behind the golf ball so that way we can move into the golf ball in the downswing. So the first drill that we do in there is to get behind the golf ball. If I'm like this at the top of the swing with my shoulder like this, right, my lead shoulder gets too far out in front of the ball, right? So if I'm here, I move this ball forward a little bit, and I get my left shoulder kind of leaning forward, you can see my spine, I get kind of this reverse spine angle look. Well, what's going to happen in the downswing, I'm going to tend to fall away, and that's going to cause a problem. So what we want to do is we want to get nice and behind the golf ball here. I want to be able to see the back of the golf ball. So that's one thing. That's the first thing that you do in that stop chunking and topping course. The second thing we do is from here, we got to get a good weight shift into our lead side. We got to be able to start the downswing in the correct way. So there's some great weight shift drills in there to help you do that. So that's exactly what I'd recommend you do if you're struggling with chunking the ball or even topping the ball. If we want to make ball then turf contact, we want to start compressing it like the tour players are. We have to have that low point of the swing arc. It has to be in front of and below the ball. The best way to work on that is to work through our stop chunking and topping course. So this course is included with your membership. All you have to do is click the house icon at the top of the page. That will take you to the homepage. And then if you scroll down the homepage, you will see a list of all the courses there. Select that stop chunking and topping course and then get started on those drills. I'm telling you, work on these drills. It's one of the number one things that I see. If we work on these drills, we can start hitting some much better shots. Even if you're someone who is maybe hitting it a little bit thin or just barely chunking it, this course will make a huge difference for you because you're actually going to start having the feeling of flushing the golf ball, hitting there's nothing better than a pure iron shot, right? So that's really one of the keys is getting into these positions at the top and getting that good weight shift into impact. Some great drills in that stop chunking and topping course. Check it out. All right, let's keep going. So Ted W says, can I preset that tilt? No, because you're going to move out of it when you go up to the top of the swing, right? So when you go to the top of the swing, you're actually going to go into left tilt, right? I wouldn't want to go into right tilt at the top of the swing because I would look like this, right? So when I go up to the top of the swing, I'm going to have some left tilt, and then I'm going to move into that right tilt as I come down to the golf ball. So no, you wouldn't really be able to preset that. So Pat says, out of all the clubs, I just don't seem to be able to use the 3-wood off the fairway. Is this club different from a 5? I mean, it's not much different. You know, assuming you're saying it's different from a 5-wood. It's not much different. Usually a 5-wood is just going to be a little bit shorter, and it's going to have a little bit more loft on it. Now, it could be that the less loft that the 3-wood has makes it very difficult for you to hit. That could be part of it if you're having trouble getting it off the ground. But I would just try to hit it the exact same way you hit your 5-wood. There's no reason to hit it any different. Hit it the exact same way, and you'll likely get, if you're hitting your 5-wood well, just hit your 3-wood the exact same way. But like I said, if 3-woods aren't for everyone, right? If you don't have a lot of club head speed, it may be very difficult to get a 3-wood up in the air. Now, a 3-wood may be good off the tee in some situations, right? Because then you can hit up on it and get up in the air more easily. But off the ground, if you don't have a lot of club head speed, you have a very low loft 3-wood, something that's like 13 to 14, 15 degrees, it may be difficult to get it up in the air. You may want more lofted club, like a 5-wood has more loft on it. A 5-wood's going to have probably 17, 18, 19 degrees of loft on it. It can. So it's easier to get those up in the air. So if you're a lower club head speed player, that may be the right club for you, and not so much a 3-wood. Charles C says, driver versus irons and wedges setup. With irons, I can keep my right elbow in front of my hip. I have a difficult time doing it with my driver. Maybe I'm standing too vertical with driver. How should forward tilt vary with driver versus irons? It's really not going to be any different. I would just look at your videos and see the difference there. A lot of times we'll swing longer. What I see a lot of times is people swing longer with their driver because they're trying to get more speed. So what ends up happening is when we swing longer, this elbow gets more flared at the top, and it's harder to get back in front. Where with the irons, we may be more here, then it's easier to get it in front. So that's usually what I see is the issue. So that might be something you want to look at. I just look on video and see what's going on there. As far as setup, the ball is going to be more forward with the driver. We're going to be a little bit wider. We might be a little bit more tilted away. But the swing mechanics are mostly the same. It's just you're swinging in a way that allows you to up on the ball. And then with the irons, we're a little bit more narrower. We may not be as much angled away. The ball positions more toward the middle of the stance, and we're hitting more down on the golf ball. But like I said, most likely what's going on is your driver swing's just longer. Your elbow is probably flaring. And when it flares too much, it gets much more difficult to get back where it needs to be tucked in there. And a lot of times you'll come down steep when that's the case. All right, so let's keep going here. So what do you recommend to work on during the winter months when you can't play? So that's a good question. I think it's good to keep the swing, try to keep the swing polished throughout the year. So there's really, it's almost endless the possibilities of things that you can work on, to be honest. So what a lot of people will work on is putting. Probably the easiest thing to work on is putting for sure. I have this putting mat here. There's this. It's very good for putting. There's all kinds. I mean, you could just putt on your carpet with with a hole like this. So all this stuff you can find online for pretty cheap. Lots of things you can do with the putting. Work through some things in our Top Speed Golf putting system to work on your putting game. You can also, if you have space to swing a golf club in your home, not everyone does, but if you have space to swing a golf club, you can work on your swing as well. You don't even have to have a net. What I actually have my setup is I have a setup in my garage. In the winter months, it may be too cold for you in the garage, but you could set this up in your house as well. I have a little mat. It's about this big, right, that I hit off of. You can get that online for pretty cheap, like $20. Then I bought these foam golf balls. They're very, very squishy foam. And if you hit them into the wall, they don't even do anything, right? And then I took a camping chair, and I draped a towel over it. And I'm just hitting these foam balls into the chair or into the towel that's draped over the chair. I mean, that's most of that stuff you probably have around your house already. Doesn't cost a lot. Now, sure, you could go all out, get a simulator set up, get all this, get real golf balls into a real net or a screen and get all these things. But you really don't have to have that stuff to work on your game in the wintertime. Just the act of swinging the club, keeping things loose, swinging a club throughout the year is a really good thing to do. And a lot of times, it's if you're wanting to change things in your swing, the winter time is the perfect time to work on those because you're not playing, right? So if you're not playing, you're not worried about, because I'm going to be real with you, it's hard to change things in your golf swing when you're trying to play well at the same time, because there's a lot to think about. And I am often trying to find a balance with the students between those things, right? But people tend to really want to work on changing their swing while they're playing because they want to see the dividends on the course right away. But it usually doesn't work that way. Usually you got to work it out, and then eventually it ends up showing up on the course. That's why in the wintertime, it's really the best time to work on changing things in your swing, because you don't have to worry about going out and playing, and you can really focus a lot on what you're doing because you're just not worried about it. So, use an app like OnForm, video your swing, see what's going on. You can work on the Top Speed Golf system, getting in your reps with the Top Speed Golf system, the stable fluid spine, the power turn, all these things. These are all things that you can work on very easily without me. If you have the space to be able to swing a club, you can do about anything. So Top Speed Golf system, what I'd be recommend, maybe work with an instructor doing our unlimited swing review program, work on things specifically that you need to be improving in your swing. That would be another really good option. Putting, very good option. So it's really endless the amount of things that you can work on. It really just depends on how much time do you got, what kind of space do you have. Even in a small amount of space, you can work on some putting. So that's really the things that I would recommend doing. Some people separate from golf in the wintertime. That's completely fine too. But if you want to, step out day one of the season and be able to be close to mid-season form, you got to be working on things in the winter, and maybe even be better than when you ended last year. Working on things, working with an instructor, doing those things. So that's what I'd recommend doing. You can work through the Top Speed Golf system, which is included with your membership. Set up the towel over the chair, get the foam balls, hit off an old piece of carpet where you can buy, a mat to hit off of. Very, very simple things you can do. Top Speed Golf putting system with a putting mat similar to this. There's lots of putting mats out there to choose from. So that's what I would recommend doing. All right, we get any new questions? All right, so we got a new one here from Barry. So Barry B says, "Hey Q, pulling my shots quite often. Watched one of Clay's video regarding dropping shoulder. Can you talk a bit about that?" So if you're pulling shots, what's happening is you're coming over the top and steep. So what you need to work on is a 20-minute shallowing fix. Get the face closed is drill number 1. So that way you're incentivized to shallow out the club, which is drill number 2. Then you dial it in with drill number 3. So Barry, that's what I'd recommend you do. Dropping the right shoulder is not usually going to make you pull shots. That's usually going to make you kind of block shots, right? So if I drop my right shoulder, assuming you're right-handed, if I drop my right shoulder, that's usually going to make me shallow out the club. That's probably not what you're doing. If you're pulling, it probably means that your right shoulder is going like this. It's coming out over the top, right? So I'd recommend working through the 20-minute shallowing fix. To get to the 20-minute shallowing fix, click the instruction tab, then 20-minute shallowing fix. So Ted W says, "Q, would love to hit a high draw. My friends are 20 yards ahead of me, but when I do hit an occasional draw, I go further than them." Ted, 20-minute shallowing fix is what I'd recommend for you as well. You can work through it with your driver. That's going to help you to hit a draw. In order to hit a draw, we need to shallow out the club, and we need the face to be a little bit close to the path. The reason why draws oftentimes go farther is because there's less loft on a draw. So you're going to compress the ball more, and then there's also typically going to be a little bit less spin. So if you can hit up on a ball and hit a draw with it, that's going to go the farthest typically, right? So that's probably what's happening on those shots when you're hitting it farther is you're hitting up on it with a little draw. So work through that 20-minute shallowing fix with your driver, and you'll get to where you can hit a draw fairly easily. All right. So again, get to the 20-minute shallowing fix, click the instruction tab, and then click the 20-minute shallowing fix. All right, so we'll talk about a couple more things here. So another question here says, what are the basics to hit the driver straight? So it's typically when I see someone really struggling with the driver, it's because this club face is very open when they're coming down, right? So they get down to last parallel with the ground, and this club face is kind of pointing up to the sky. So when it's like that, you have to imagine how hard it's going to be to get that club face back to squared up. I'm going to have to typically kind of stand up out of it and really roll my hands over very hard, right? So imagine if you're like this, right? The club face is very open versus if I have the club face more square and I turn through the ball, I'm going to hit the ball a lot straighter, right? If I have the club face more like this and I just have to turn to the ball, I'm going to hit the ball a lot straighter. But if the face is like this, pointing up to the sky, then what's going to happen is I'm going to have to stand up, roll my hands over hard. The timing just gets so difficult. And not to mention, you have to kind of collaborate how much you're kind of standing up with it, with how much you're kind of throwing it out, right? To even hit it in the center of the face. Because that's what we need. In order to hit the ball straight with your driver, we need to have the club face square. We need to have the club path pretty neutral, square coming through. And then we need to have a center face contact. I actually had some foot pirate spray sprayed on this face. You can see that would be a center face contact right there. So if we're hitting it on the heel or the toe, that will definitely affect the ball flight. It's not just about the face being square and the path of the club and the relationship of the two. A lot has to do. You can have that perfect. You can have the face dead square. You can have the path dead neutral coming through contact perfect. But if you hit that way off the heel, way off the toe, it's not going to go straight. It's not going to go very far either. So when you hit the ball off the heel, the ball will tend to start more to the left because the face is twisting and shutting. And then when you hit the ball off the toe, the ball will tend to go more to the right for right-handed golfers. Now, gear effect can come into play too. You know, it can actually tend to put some spin, some crazy spin on it. We won't talk a ton about gear effect, but the bottom line is, if you don't hit it in the center of the face, it's not going to go straight unless you have a mixture of a lot of bad things that net to it going straight. And when that happens, it may go straight, but it's not going to go very far because those mix of bad things aren't going to help you to compress the ball, right? So like I said, when I see people struggle with hitting the driver straight, overwhelming majority of them, you can pause the swing right here, and that club face will be wide open. It'll be kind of pointing up to the sky. Well, where do we want that pointing? Ideally, what we would want it, where we would want it to be, is we want it to be kind of matching your back line. So my back line is this line right here, right on my back. If it's matching my back line, that's angled slightly down toward the ground, right? And then from there, I'm going to be able to stay in my posture. I'm going to be able to rotate through the shot. So how on earth do we do that? How on earth do we get that to be in a better position? So number one would be most likely strengthening the grip. Most people have a very weak grip, meaning their thumbs are kind of on top of the grip like this. The reason why a lot of people have this weak grip is because it's the most comfortable thing. It's the most comfortable position for most people, right? If you just handed this club to me, I'd probably just grip it like this, right? It's very, very comfortable to just have my thumbs going straight down the shaft. That's why most people do that, and they stick with it. The problem is that if we have that weak grip, I have to be doing things with my wrist. Look what I have to do with my lead wrist to get that club face to kind of match my back line coming down. I have to bow this a lot. That's very difficult for a lot of people to do. Now, if I have a stronger grip where my thumbs are more like this, kind of on the side of the grip, you think of the top of the grip as 12 o'clock, and I put my thumbs more at 1:30, 2 o'clock. Well, now when I come down, right, I can have a flat wrist, and now that club is more matching my backline more easily. So that would be probably number one, the easiest thing to do. And then the other thing, if you're not comfortable with a stronger grip, then we have to do the wrist angles. We have to kind of bow the wrists, right? Now, the other thing that a lot of people struggle with is getting this club shallow. So a lot of times when this face is like this club is also outside of the hands. I don't see it a lot coming from the inside with the face open. It's usually coming outside and steep, right? It's coming down steep with the face open, right? So it just makes it so difficult because now you're cutting across the ball, you're flipping the hands over to square it up. You're going to have a hard time hitting it in the center of the face, not only hitting in the center of the face, but also controlling your face and your path and all those things. So like I said, how do we get to where, okay, I want to get this club shallowing out. I want to get this club face more square, and I want to hit the ball in the center of the face more often. The best thing you can do is work through our 20-minute shallowing fix. Now, Clay in the 20-minute shallowing fix is doing it with an iron, but you can do this with every single club in the bag. And the one thing to understand is with a driver, we actually have to shallow out the club more, right? The reason is because the ball position is more forward, right? So if I shallow out the club the same amount I do with an iron, then it's going to be shallowed out, turning, it's going to the right. But then because my ball position is more forward, it's actually going to start to turn to the left by the time it gets to the ball. So if I want to shallow out my driver, or if I want to have a nice neutral swing path with my driver, I actually have to shallow it out more. So that way it's turning the corner at the golf ball and not before the golf ball, right? So that's one thing we have to understand. A lot of people, they work through that 20-minute shallowing fix. They get to where they're drawing their irons, but then they go to the driver and they're still slicing their driver. Well, you have to shallow it more with the driver, right? So if you want to hit your driver straight, I highly recommend working through our 20-minute shallowing fix with the driver. This is where we first get that club face in a good place. Then number two, once we're able to do that, now we're incentivized to get that club working from the inside. That's what we do in drill number two. And then drill number three, we dial it in. We find that nice baby draw that you're wanting to hit that goes farther, and then you can start out driving your buddies. So this 20-minute shallowing fix, it's included with your membership. If you haven't gone through it already, if you haven't gone through it with your driver, I highly recommend you go through it with your driver as well. To get to the course, click the instruction tab, then click the 20-minute shallowing fix and get started with those drills and start hitting that driver straight and consistently. All right, so I think we had another question come in. So Dan S says, was talking about my draw I was able to hit the other day that worked well. Since then, I have been switching back and forth from a fade to a draw, but I also figured out that somewhere between those stances, I can hit a fairly straight, longish drive, my own version of variability training. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. It's good to be able to do both, right? And really with a draw and a fade, you're really doing the same thing with your swing. The only thing what the best players do is they just change the face, right? So, if I'm setting up for a draw, I might set up with my body a little bit aimed to the right and then let that face close as I'm coming into contact. If I'm setting up for a fade, I'm still going to shallow out the club, but I'm going to angle my body to the left a little bit. So that way my club path is a little bit to the left, but I'm still shallowing it relative to my body. And then I'm just going to kind of hold that face through contact and not let that face shut. I'm just going to hold that face open, and that's going to help me to get that fade. So that's how the best players are doing it. And that's why you see a lot of players like Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, a lot of these long hitters, a lot of them hit fades because they're a little bit easier to control for them, because instead of letting the face roll over, they're basically holding the face all the way through contact. And for them, it's a little bit easier to control. Now, I only really recommend doing that if you have a lot of club head speed to support that, because you won't hit the ball as far doing that. But if you have a lot of club head speed, 120 plus club head speed, like a Dustin Johnson or a Brooks Koepka, right? It doesn't hurt you, right? So that's what I'd recommend doing. Charles C says, I have heard to not hit it straight. Why would that be? So that's a good question. It's because hitting a dead straight shot is the hardest shot in golf, right? We have to have the face square, center face strike, and we have to have our path very neutral, right? So everything has to be, dead straight. Whereas if we plan to have some curvature on it, then it's just an easier. There's more variance there. There's more margin for error typically when you do that. So not to say that you can't hit the ball dead straight, and if that's your MO to try to do that, that's 100% fine. But you're typically going to see tour players are going to favor some sort of curvature. They want to see the ball start in some direction, then curve a little bit. It's generally just going to give you more control if you do that. So yeah, dead straight shot is one of the hardest shots to hit for sure. All right, so we got one more question here, and then we will wrap it up. All right, so what is the difference between chipping and pitching? So good question. So for chipping, a chip is a shot that we're going to want to get on the green and rolling toward the hole like a putt as soon as we can. Now this can be done anywhere. This can be done from 30 or so yards out if you want to. Generally, it won't be hit that far away. Generally, these chip shots are going to be from pretty close to the green, within 5 yards of the green. That doesn't mean that you can't hit a chip shot from other parts, from longer parts as well. And also depends on what kind of golf you're playing. If you're playing link style golf, you may be hitting chips from much farther away. If there's a lot of short grass that you can get the ball rolling on, right? We see this a lot when we see the Open Championship, right? We see them hit a lot of chip shots. There's a lot less wedge pitch type shots, and there's a lot more running the ball up, right? So that's essentially what a chip is getting the ball rolling toward the hole as soon as we can. Generally, for most of the golf that we're playing, we're going to be wanting to land that on the green because it's going to be a much more predictable bounce. But if we're in link style, the bounces are pretty predictable. But if we're not in link style, where we have rough around the green or even fringe, that can be a little less predictable. We don't know what kind of bounce it's going to take out of there. We don't know if it's going to get hung up in that grass or not. So we generally want to carry this ball onto the green and get it rolling. And what I like is 3 to 6 feet onto the green is generally what I like to see, right? So for a chip technique, we would want to use a club that's lofted in a way that's going to allow us to carry it just on the green and get it to roll. So sometimes this can be a wedge, right? If it's a closer chip and you have very fast greens, sometimes that will be the case. But usually it's going to be something that's more lower lofted, right? You're going to be going toward a 9-iron, an 8-iron. In some situations, you may even use like a hybrid, right? You can chip with a hybrid oftentimes. So this is going to be with our feet fairly close together, ball about in the middle of the stance. And it's going to be just kind of a rocking back and forth kind of motion, right? Because we don't need to have a ton of speed on these shots because they're typically going to be lower lofted. So the ball is going to come out a little bit hotter and get rolling toward the green. Now, chips, I generally recommend for most players because it's usually going to be the highest percentage shot because there's not as much speed involved. There's a lot more margin for error. We can typically have this club kind of gliding on the turf if we're using the correct technique, and we can hit a little bit behind the ball, a little bit ahead of the ball, and we're still going to end up with a pretty good shot, right? Usually, your worst chip, right, is better than like a pitch shot if the shot calls for a chip, right? Now, everybody's a little bit different, right? If you're way better with pitch shots than chip shots, then hit pitch shots all the way around. But generally, for most people, a chip shot where we're getting the ball on the green and rolling very quickly is, without a lot of spin. That's kind of the main difference is there's just not a lot of spin on a chip shot. Then that's generally what we want to do. Now, with a pitch shot, the goal there is typically to have more spin. We want to carry the ball in the air most of the way to the hole and then get it to stop with spin and or the height of the shot, right? Because those are typically going to be higher shots that are coming in. So these shots can be done anywhere very close to the green and can be done quite a bit of ways. You can hit pitch shots from 80, 90 yards, depending on, what your club head speed is like. If you have a lot of club head speed, you might be hitting, Tony Finau is hitting pitch shots from 90 and 100 yards. It's crazy. You'll watch him on TV and it'll look like he took this little swing, but then it's a 90, 100-yard shot, and it looked like a little pitch. For some people, that same swing, because they don't have as much club head speed, that same swing may be made from like 40 or 50 yards away. So it really just depends on the player on how far you're hitting these pitch shots. But again, pitch shots are going to be done with wedges because those have more loft, and we want to get up in the air, and we want to get it carrying to the hole and stopping with spin. If we want to get spin, we have to have loft. If we want to get height, we want to have loft, right? So the technique is very similar. We typically are going to have our feet closer together. Now, if it's a longer pitch, you may widen that out just a little bit to give you a little bit more stability. But usually 30 yards and in or so, we're going to be feet pretty close together, ball position a little bit more in the middle of the stance. But generally with a pitch, we're just going to have a little bit more hinge of the wrist, and it's going to be a little bit longer of a swing that's going to allow you to get more speed. Because if we have more loft, we have to use more speed to hit the ball to get it to the hole, right? So if I have a 5-iron in my hand and I'm trying to hit a 30-yard shot, it might look something like that, right? And if I have a wedge if I have a 60-degree in my hand and I'm trying to hit a 30-yard shot, it may look something more like that, right? You need to hit it harder, which is why I generally recommend players chip, because there's a lot less margin for error. And also with a wedge, the interaction with the ground can be a little bit more difficult. Wedges have that sharp leading edge on them, right, which is going to tend to want to dig into the ground. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to do that, especially if you're playing tight conditions, wet conditions, where that club is generally going to want to dig a little bit. A lot of times a chip is the right way to go if you can do it, right? So again, a pitch is going to it's going to be very similar. We're just going to add a little bit of hinge in there, a little bit more speed in there to get the ball to get up in the air. So that's really the main differences between your chip and your pitch. Now, if you want to learn the perfect technique for these shots and you want to have drills to help you dial in these things. So for chips, being able to dial in, know what club to hit from how far away, and kind of how it's going to react, some drills to build the skills to do that. And for pitches, to know when we get farther away from the green, how do I know what club to hit, what wedge to hit, and how do I know how hard I need to hit it, right? Some great drills in there to help you with that as well. So we have 2 courses. We have our chipping mastery course, which is going to help you with those chips, right? Learning that kind of bump and run type shot. And then we have our Top Speed Golf wedge system, which is going to help you with the proper technique for the wedges and help you to get that dialed in, not only the distance, but also the direction. Get that dialed in as well, and some great drills for that. So these 2 courses, they're included with your membership to Top Speed Golf. To get to them, all you have to do is click the house icon at the top of the page. If you scroll down on the page from the home page, you'll see a list of all the courses there, 20 plus courses included with your membership. You'll see those 2 courses there. Get started with those drills and get really good at knowing what club to hit and when to hit it, what type of shot to hit, and learn how to hit these shots. So that way you can be really good in those scoring zones, that 100 yards and in. So that way you can shoot much lower scores. All right, so I think that's it. All right, so that's it, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. We'll be back here on Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Everybody have a great weekend, and I will talk to y'all next time.